Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel. And today we have with us another special guest, and he goes by the name of Rob Bhana. Now, Rob has had a very long and extensive career in medical sales, senior level medical sales, marketing leader. He's currently the regional vice president of sales for Nanosonics, an infection prevention company that has successfully developed and commercialized a unique automated disinfection technology. But I'm not going to spoil it by talking any further. You're going to have to listen to the episode to get that. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that are doing things differently in the medical sales space. So I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Rob, how are we doing today?
I'm great, Samuel. How are you?
No complaints, just making it happen in 2023. Why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
My name is Rob Bhana, and but before I do that, though, I just want to say congratulations on the 153 or so episodes. If I'm not
Yeah, you
mistaken
know
now.
what? Thank you. I appreciate that, Rob. We've come a long way, and we're very proud of it. Thank you.
Well, you should be. You know, I can remember when I first got my start in medical sales, I would have loved to have had a resource around, like Evolve Your Success and giving advice to people about breaking into medical sales. And obviously, I know it also goes to people that, been around a while like me and trying to get to the top, remain at the top, or advance the career. But I think that's fantastic, and I'm honored to be talking to you here today. So I personally have been in the medical sales field for over 30 years. I'm a legacy. My dad was also in medical sales for 30 years, so it's really been part of my life for the whole.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now that's a first.
So
Your dad was a medical sales professional for 30 years, and you literally, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so I'm very passionate about selling. I'm proud to be a professional medical salesperson, and I'm the first to tell everybody that. I believe I'm a student of selling, and I believe that the minute that I think I know too much is the minute I lose my value to my company. And so it's always growing and learning. And I've had the pleasure to hire over 1,000 salespeople in the medical field. I've had the opportunity to train over 1,500 in a variety of different training programs. And I've done over 3,000, I was figuring this out the other day, 3,000 coaching sessions, ride-alongs, whatever you term them, with a lot of salespeople. And so I've learned a lot from each of those, some of it the good and some of it the stuff. Boy, I hope I never did that. But my current role is as the regional vice president of Nanosonics, and we are a infection prevention company who's really created the standard of care for high-level disinfection of ultrasound probes.
Awesome. So, you're almost 6 years of experience, because there's your 30 and then there's your dad's 30 that I'm assuming was passed on to you. Is that the case, or not quite?
Well, some of it was, yeah. It was. We were never. We never really sat down and talked about sales strategies, until I got into sales. And then when I did, I actually, then we would start to talk about that. But I was very fortunate that I actually left the company to go spend the last 10 years of his career before he retired. So we worked at the same organization for the last 10 years,
Wow.
and or close to 10 years. And that was a blast. I got to see him win awards. He got to see me win awards.
This just gets better.
So this was.
You? And what position?
I was actually a director of sales, and he was a regional manager. He didn't work for me, but I outranked him, so it was great. So
I don't even know. I don't even know how to take that. How did he take that?
He was, he was great with it. He was very, very proud of what I was able to accomplish. So I have the unique experience of starting 4 inside sales programs for 4 different medical companies.
Wow.
And way before inside sales, that's how I got my start. Way before anybody even knew what inside sales was. Back then, we even still called it telemarketing, right? And things were different back then, especially with startups. So a lot of my career has been with companies under $1 billion, and a lot of it has been startups. So whether it was starting a new division of an existing company or just a complete startup, that's where I've spent quite a bit of my time as well. And so it's been a lot of fun. And you know what? It's been, it's a great way to make a living, right? If you're selling something you're really passionate about, that you believe in, that makes a difference for people, and I would never do it any other way.
Absolutely. So, did he report to you?
He did not. No, no, we wouldn't have done that. Wouldn't have worked well.
Tough.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would have been pretty tough.
yeah.
Um,
So we both played baseball in college, and so we're pretty competitive, and to the point where we can't really. My mom has forbid us to even play pool together. Now he's so we're yeah, that wouldn't have worked well.
that's hilarious. Do you have siblings, or is it just you?
Two older sisters, one that's an attorney and one that's a teacher.
Okay, okay. So yeah, it's just you and dad then going back and forth.
Yeah,
That's the only way.
back
Okay,
and forth.
that's so cool. All right. So you have so much experience. I'd venture to say you've probably seen almost everything.
Well, I think I've seen a lot. Um, I think that there's an opportunity to grow all the time. And as I alluded to, I mean, I'm a big believer. I'm going to throw a few sayings out at you. I'm a sayings guy because
Yeah,
just like when I sell, I'm a storyteller,
better
right?
preach. We're listening.
Yeah. And what was good enough to get you there isn't good enough to keep you there or get you to the next level. And so I always am looking at how do we do things. One of the companies that I worked for had a great thing in our motto, and the motto was, "We don't do things the best way. We just do things the best way we know how." And so when we bring you in, we want you to teach us a better way. If
Mhm.
there is a better way, I'm all open for that. So yeah, I just, as it relates to, it would be hard for a salesperson to give me, an excuse or something like that that I haven't heard at least a few times.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a very different world than it was 33 years ago when I started calling out physicians' offices, right? HMOs and PPOs didn't even exist. Nobody even knew what those were. And so, I don't want to bore everybody with all of that. But there were no cell phones. There was no email.
Mhm.
When you went in for an appointment, they would actually shut the door and they wouldn't answer the phone. So obviously, the selling environment, whether that's in acute care with purchasing, didn't really exist then, or they didn't have near the authority that they do today. There were no GPOs, even
Sure.
no IDNs, and so it's a very different world. But to me, the fundamentals of selling really don't change. And the tools that you use, the availability of information, even the expectation of the customers and your preparedness because of those tools, those are all different today. And I think the buyer is more educated because there's so much more information that they can go do. So I think they go do their own research more than back then we were the
But
information.
you couldn't have said it better. I did a talk about maybe a year and a half ago or so about the power of social media. And there's some research that we pulled out by Gartner that was showing how, you know, decision makers now are most of them are millennials. And the millennial decision maker, they don't even want to deal with the sales rep in any way, shape, or form. They want to do their own research. And then when they need a sales rep is when if they have questions about their own research, but they prefer to make decisions off their research. So that you couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, and I think you obviously have to adjust to that as an organization and as a salesperson. And I think because they're better educated, when you go in front of them, especially at the higher levels, you have to be more prepared. And I think that dictates a lot of what your pre-call planning needs to be and what your preparation needs to be. And then, of course, it also depends on the level of education of the product that you're selling that you're actually getting across, and then who are you calling on? It's very different if I'm calling on in terms of my preparation, if I'm dealing with someone that's frontline patient care than it is if I'm dealing with the CFO and the C-suite. And I'm not going to ask them the same questions, right?
Right.
I mean, and they don't expect me to ask them the same
Right.
questions, and nor do I, right? So I think that's where it's a little different, but again, I think the fundamentals of um, understanding the customer, uncovering their needs, and then presenting it in a way that you're focused on how it's going to solve their issues and problems versus your features. That's never going to change for the best sales.
Yep. So your experience is constitutes of both inside and outside sales experience.
Correct.
So, let's jump into that, into, what makes a good sales professional. I would love to hear from you, thinking about the individual contributor. What would you say are the top three things that someone needs to be able to bring each and every day, um, if they're serious about, being successful in a medical sales position?
Attitude, work ethic, and good judgment.
I love it. Straight laced
But,
attitude.
I mean, that's and good judgment. Um, Not always easy to uncover, but when I sit down and talk to people, that's what I look for, and that's what I try and uncover is, where do they fall in those three? Now there are other intangibles, right? You have to be able to communicate. All of those things that go beyond that. But those are the three that I look for the most:
Say 'em one
um,
more time. Attitude,
work ethic
work
and
ethic.
good
So
judgment.
so let's fast forward to, I mean, I love the fact that you've had so many interviews in your career. Think about one of these people that's interviewing, a candidate that's interviewing for you. How do you assess their work ethic, attitude, and their judgment?
Well, I think you have to ask really good questions. You obviously have to look at their track record, and you have to look at, depending on what their experience has been. The interesting thing for me is I've hired a lot of kids right out of school, and then I've hired people that have 15, 20, 25 years of experience, depending on which organization it's been. And so you have to adjust your questions based on, what are you looking at in front of you and what is their experience level. If it's somebody like Joe Testa that I hired right out of college, right? He was an athlete, and you have to look at what has he done so far and what has he done to show that he has that work ethic and that drive, and the good judgment's the hardest one to find, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And that's the one that is not easy. But I think, the other part, if I'm dealing with someone that has experience, I want to know what have they done with hitting their quota. Where do they rank in their sales organization? Talk to me about the sale you're most proud of, and it doesn't have to be the one that's the biggest dollar amount. Walk me through that. Walk me through what happened. Tell me about the hardest sale that you ever made in terms of length of sale or complexity, and walk me through that. And so I think what you're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, is just try and find out from them. Number one, what is that drive? It's interesting, Samuel, because I tell my people all the time, I'm not worried about what happens when we're there. I'm worried that we're not giving the customer what they need when we're not there, and they have to fight the internal battle, and someone's telling them no, right? As it relates to the hiring side, um, you know, the I'm trying to uncover what are they going to do? Are they self motivated enough to get up in the morning and do what they need to do without someone looking over their shoulder?
Now,
And that's where you have to try and just ask really good questions and have them tell you about their successes in the past.
so we're going to dig in a little bit more then, especially around these questions, because good judgment, I think, is a challenging thing to properly assess on a stranger. But considering you've had so much experience, talk to us a little bit about how you're able to sift through the fluff, for lack of a better word, and maybe give us an example of what it looks like, someone that's pretending to showcase good judgment, and what it looks like with someone that, in your opinion, really does have good judgment.
Well, I think, again, if I were to look at a resume and there were, let's say, 3 or 4 job changes in 3 or 4 years, right? We're all going to naturally dig into that whenever we're doing an interview. But I'm gonna usually ask 2 or 3 questions that go a little bit deeper once they give me an answer. So if they said to me, um, there was a layoff, right? And I was the last one hired. I'm going to dig into that a little bit, and I'm going to say, okay, listen, we've all experienced that. That's a tough thing. Tell me a little bit more about the layoff. How many people were in the sales force, and how many were affected by the layoff? And then I want to hear where they're going to say, um, depending on where they were and how long they've been there. I want to see if they're going to take any ownership of it, or if it really was that case. And it could go either way, right? It really could go either way. And so, one of the things I love to do, I love to take people out to dinner in the interview process.
What? Wait, wait,
So
wait.
I almost always take people out to dinner
Now
or
this
lunch.
is new. So wait a minute. So they interview with you in the day, and then you say, "Hey, I want to," or the actual interview happens over dinner.
Usually the interview is first, or even after. If I'm like if I was flying into town and they weren't available that next night, I would go to dinner with them first, and then I would do the interview the next day.
Wow.
And
So
the reason for that is we're all different when we're in an interview.
mhm.
And so I want to see how they treat the waiter. I want to see how they treat the people in the restaurant. I want to see how they interact with other people when they're on their best behavior.
Right, right. So
Right?
so if the dinner is before the actual interview, during the dinner, what's and by the way, I have seen this before, but it's not common. But what questions are you I'm assuming you're really trying not to ask any interview questions for the following day or for, whenever that interview is going to happen. Outside of seeing how they treated the people, what are you revolving the conversation around?
Yeah, usually by then we've at least done an initial interview. And so I won't go into anything new, but I'll just ask them a little bit more about,
Got it.
what it was that they already talked to me about. And then, some of it is I try and see if they try and lead and steer the conversation,
Now,
right?
now, do you like that when a candidate tries to lead and steer the conversation?
I Yes, in that situation, right? I think what you really have to do is you're looking for somebody that in my I'm a big believer in the steps of the sales call. And really an interview is really nothing other than a sales call, right? You're just selling yourself, not a product. And so when I sell and when I try and work with salespeople, I believe in engineering agreement to move the ball forward. So I like them to feel like they're in control while we're kind of really in control. And so that's giving them an opportunity to say, I don't have any more time, right? That's giving them when they've said you've got 30 minutes. When I look at my watch and I say, okay, you know what? When we sat down, you mentioned you had something else, and we're at 30 minutes where the conversation's really going well, but I want to be sensitive to your time. Did you want to keep going, or should we schedule some other time? And a lot of the times you just keep going, right? They'll say, yeah, let's keep going. And so I think it depends how you control the conversation.
Sure.
And I believe, otherwise I wouldn't be in it as a profession. I believe people love to buy, but they hate to be sold.
Mhm.
And so it's a feeling of that, is it really a conversation? Or is it somebody leading me somewhere? Or is it somebody that's, presenting before they even know I have a need, and all of that. So in that kind of a situation, what I would love to see is this person to ask me some questions about the organization. And usually when I start the dinner off, I'll say, you know what, I don't want this to be an interview. So but I'm not going to ask you anything that's inappropriate, but ask me whatever you want. And then I just kind of see what they say.
I love it. Okay. So my question is, how many times were you certain that or thought you wanted to hire someone and then the dinner is what ruled them out?
Probably 15-20% of the time.
So what is that like? Of course, without naming names, give us the scenario. I mean, I'm sure the audience is thinking, I want to know what those stories sound like. So drop it on us, Rob.
Some of it's amazing. We had a candidate once that, and I had our regional manager with us who had already interviewed this person 3 times, and we got done with this dinner, and this candidate went off on the waiter because the drink was wrong
In front of you, in front of
in
everybody.
front of us. We're all sitting there in suits at a chain restaurant, and he went off because I think it was a Diet Coke versus a regular Coke,
So what
right?
happened?
Well, we just knew right then. I mean, we finished the dinner, but he was dead. I mean, if that's the way he reacted to something as benign as a drink order being wrong, how's he going to react with your own customer service team? Even when we're doing that, I'm almost looking as much for how would they interact with your internal team, your internal customers versus your external customers, because we all know when we're dealing with external customers, whether we're an introvert really or whether we're an extrovert, we're on stage. right? We're actors, and
Right.
we know that. But then, how do they really interact with the internal team that is instrumental in helping us get our job done? And that's where that just kind of made me go, wait a minute. And then we get, I can remember the regional manager. We get back out in the car, and he said, I don't know who the heck that person was, but that was not the guy that I just spent 3 days interviewing. So, there's all kinds of, little things like
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so in addition to that story, tell us what was the situation with the candidate that impressed you the most out of all the candidates you've ever interviewed?
that.
Tell us what
At
the
a dinner,
situation was and what they did that impressed you so much.
I think probably the ones that impress you the most, especially although it's a little different today, are the ones that have really done their homework and that come in and they've got a presentation prepared. They come in and they're ready to even, let's say, do a role play without you asking them to do that. And they come in and they differentiate themselves from all the other, right? Because that's what you're trying to do. That's what your resume is designed to do. It's designed to, in 15 seconds, get somebody to say, hey, let's talk to this person, at least give them a phone screen or whatever. And what you're really looking for is, how is this person going to be, how are they going to be different? What is their preparation level like for this interview? Because if you haven't done your planning or pre-call planning, whatever you want to call it, for an interview, right? What are you going to do when you have
I
five
did in the
calls the
field.
next day?
Right, 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 right.
And so it really is, um, to me, very telling,
Mhm,
especially again at what level you're hiring at.
mhm, mhm. Wow. And then, I want to get into some of your history. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit more about your experience with sales professionals. And we've talked about the individual contributor and candidates, but now I want to move it to sales leaders. And because of your position, you've managed multiple sales leaders. In your opinion, the same question: what are the top three things you think a leader of a sales team needs to have?
A psychology degree? No, that's actually what my degree is in. But no, in all seriousness, I would say they have to have great communication skills. They have to have the ability to teach, and they have to have patience. When I first got promoted, I worked for an incredible mentor who was an incredible salesperson. And then when I got promoted very quickly, 6 months into my career, and I was managing people that were twice my age, he sat me down and he said, you know, the hardest thing that you're going to run into, and any manager does when they get promoted, is these people are not everyone is going to have the same work ethic. Not everyone is going to care as much as you do. And you can't expect that. If we had a room full of you, we wouldn't really even need a manager, right? And so, lead from the front, have high expectations, but just remember that you don't put your expectations so high that you're going to get overly frustrated, in your role. And so I think that, and then I think that maybe the toughest thing for a new manager, in my experience, is, and I'm not displaying it very well right now, and that is to learn to be quiet. You go in, and one of the first things you do when you go to a ride along and you see somebody struggling a little bit is you want
Want
to
to
jump
jump in and then just, no, this is how you do it. And you just restraining yourself with all your might. I know exactly what you're talking about.
in. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is a skill, and you have to work at that, and it's kind of teach a person to fish or hand them a fish, right? And obviously, if it was a large IDN that meant millions and millions, I'm not going to let them crash and burn on that, right? But you have to be willing to allow them to make those mistakes and learn from them in the right situation.
Awesome. So, you started with Sage products back in 98, correct?
Mhm. Well, yeah, well, that's when I started with Sage. Yes.
Okay. And before that, was it college and you knew you wanted to do this role, or was this just an opportunity you decided to take after college?
I actually thought I was going to be a clinical psychologist, and
Mhm.
I did some work with, down with some, on the complete extreme with, paranoid schizophrenics, And I had known this one patient for over 2 years, and he saw something on a bus sign that sent him completely back into not even knowing who I was anymore. And I'm such a goal oriented person. And again, I understand that's the extreme, but it's part of the reason I work out pretty much every day is because it's one of those things I can control,
Mm,
and I do it, and I'm done, and I can check that box and move to the next thing. There's so many things in sales that we can't control,
mhm.
and that are those variables. And me knowing I was a goal oriented person, I decided, you know what, I don't think that's going to fit for me. And then I turned to what my dad was doing, and I said, you know what, it's given us a really good life, and he seems to enjoy it. And so I sat down and talked to him about it, and he said, well, if that's what you want to do, I'll let you talk to a couple of recruiters that I use, and they'll give you some advice, just like I was talking about. Would have been great to have your resources around, and that's kind of how I got into it.
So you've been a sales manager, you've been a national director, you've been a VP, you've been an executive VP. I mean, you've consistently made headway into the role you are today. What would you say, give us your philosophy on what drives you to take your career success to where it is? Is it something that, every day you say this to yourself? Is it a mantra? Is it maybe spiritual based? Tell us what that life philosophy is that drives
I think it's helping people achieve what they want to achieve, and being a conduit for them to do that. Now, obviously, there's some self-centeredness in there because it helps me get to where I want to get to. But you get to a level, hopefully, where you're looking outwards and not always looking inwards. And whether it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs or however you want to look at it, there's stages to your career, right? And once you have a certain level of income and a certain level of accomplishment, I think it becomes much easier to look outward. But I've always looked at it. I've been the team captain of every team I was ever on. I was, student class president. I've always been
those? Yeah, the
um,
leadership.
a leader, right? And so it's been one of those things where I haven't always been a vocal leader, but
Mhm.
I've been someone that if we were going to go do a run, I was going to finish first or second every time. If we were going to go do a workout after practice and none of us felt like doing it, I was going to do it, and I was going to be there doing that. And so it's I have really high expectations of myself, and I have expectations of others, and that's the kind of person I want to work for. But I don't expect anybody to work harder than I am. That will never happen, and I don't ever ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do in front of them. And so if I say, you know what, why don't you try this, and they were to say to me, can you give me an example? Absolutely, I'd be happy to give you an example. And if you want me to handle this one in front of the customer, I'll be happy to, because I shouldn't expect you to be able to do something. And that goes beyond selling. It goes into management. It goes into every facet of the business of
You
trying to
know,
help people grow. So I've been very blessed with the mentors that I've had, and I take mentoring very seriously. And pay it forward, whatever verbiage you want to use for that. That really motivates me.
okay. And it's funny that you say the work ethic. I've interviewed hundreds of VPs and CEOs and you name it. And you know what I consistently hear from VPs especially? No one is going to outwork me. And I'm not making this up. This is it's clicking right now, but I think that is the most consistent thing that I hear from VP level professionals is no one's going to outwork me. So you just reinforced that whole thing. So that's cool. Everybody listening, those candidates out there listening, I hope you're taking notes because Rob is dropping knowledge on us over here. Um,
Well, I think, Samuel, when you look at it, right, and you've been doing this a long time, when you look at, we all have our own strengths. We all have things we do well. And if you become introspective and you work with people and you give them the opportunity to give you feedback,
mhm,
whether they're your superior or someone that is a colleague or someone that works technically for you, I try and invite that feedback all the time. And the goal is for all of us to get better. And that I know that there are things that I'm good at, and I know that there are things that other people do a lot better than I do. But that whole thing of you're not going to outwork me. I'm not going to lose because I get outworked. One of the things that one of the owners of one of our companies said was, there are no unrealistic expectations. There are just unrealistic timeframes. And he used to always also say, we've never lost a game yet. Now the score, we may have run out of time, but we weren't giving up yet, right? So we haven't lost a game yet.
So whoever created that, tell him I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that as of today. I will be using those terms.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's fantastic. So okay, so let's get back to you. You have you've worked for all these different companies. I think I'm looking at four different companies you work for, all leadership positions, all in the VP space, and here you are today with another one. How do you make it work with your social life? Are you a family man? Do you have kids? The wife. How do you make it all work?
Yeah, no, I'm blessed. My wife Jenny and I just celebrated our 30th anniversary in Iceland 3 weeks ago, and so she's been the rock and the supportive.
30th anniversary.
30th
I'm going to
anniversary.
call you the man of 30. Your dad gave you 30. You put in 30. You've been married for 30 years.
Yes. Yes. So,
that is wonderful.
So she, unfortunately, we were not blessed with kids. We met in college at a day camp, and that was always part of the plan, but that didn't happen. And so we outside of work, we fill our time with volunteering at some animal shelters and some things like that. You can see the pictures of the dog behind me, probably. But and then a lot of family, a lot of nieces and nephews, and all of that. And so I'm a sports fanatic, and I'm an avid reader. I read probably 2 books a week. One a business book. 2 books a week. One a business book. One a bestseller. I think Stephen King's book Holly came out 2 days ago. I just finished it last night. So I really enjoy. I would much rather sit down with a book than watch TV.
Man, so I thought I was doing something with my 2 to 3 books a month. 2 books a week. I got to step my game up. Challenge me, Rob. I got to step my game up. Okay, fantastic. And do you travel a lot?
I do. I travel. I'm on the road the next 5 weeks. So that's we're in trade show season, so that doesn't happen all the time.
Sure.
But I believe training it's an ongoing thing. It's not an event. I think too many companies treat training as an event, and we're going to have a 2-day training program and then pretend that that's going to change habits, and it's not, right? And so if you're really going to help people grow and change habits, you have to be consistent with what you're trying to show them and the feedback that you're giving them. And so part of it is just trying to be consistently out there. And also, the value that I can bring to my organization too is providing customer feedback and providing them with what we're hearing in the marketplace. And if you do it well, people respond to titles. Some people, and they'll often share things with me that they won't share with one of the account managers. And that's where I can come in and ask a question or ask an opinion or ask them for some feedback in a way that doesn't potentially impede on that direct relationship with our business. And I can, so when I go out and work with the salesperson, I ask them what they want me to do. I'm not there to just, you did this well, you did this well. We're going in and we're saying, okay, what's our plan? What's our goal? And then what do you want me to do? And let's get this done, right? They don't need we're hiring really good people there. I'm not there to babysit anybody. We're there to have fun, number one. My favorite saying in life is life's too short to dance with ugly men. And that's a Mae West
saying. I've never heard that in my entire life. Say it one more time.
Life is too short to dance with ugly men. And you can look at me. I'm obviously not talking about my looks as it relates to that, but I'm going back to that attitude and that having fun. And that's the way I try and approach it. Is let's have a good time while we're doing this. It's why not, right? You could take it the other way, and then it's not a way I want to go. So.
Right. I get it. All right. On that note, we're going to be bringing this to a close. I want you to drop some knowledge for each segment I'm going to mention right now. So the first one thing that you tell the candidates that are all looking to get into medical sales right now, what's the one thing you just leave with them on this episode today?
I would say just whatever you're doing, give it 100% and be successful at it. even if it's not what you want to be doing yet. You've got to show a track record of success, however you can get that,
Love
to
it.
help differentiate yourself from the other candidates that are out there.
I love it. Okay, now for the medical sales professionals that are in the field as we speak, well, not today, but maybe when the week's happening, they're in the
Yes,
field.
when the week's happening.
What would you share with them?
I think we've gotten too reactive. We're not in many cases. We're not proactive anymore as much as we used to be, in my experience, of good territory management,
Mhm.
good customer planning. What's our strategy there?
For
So I
sure.
think, when we look at the way that I look at sales training is it's a playbook, right? If we use the sports analogy. But a playbook is not where you stop. Then before you go into an account, or a game, you draw up a game plan, right? So you have your playbook, then you have your game plan, and then when I'm in front of the defense and they're changing, now I'm going to call an audible,
Right.
right? So there's three levels of it, and I think in many cases today we don't we stop at one level instead of looking at it as a little bit longer term than it really should be, because especially in capital sales, which is what I'm in now, if I miss out, I may be looking at 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, but I've still got to have a plan, and I still need to be proactive so I don't miss that chance,
Absolutely.
right? Or as much as I can.
I,
So
I,
I think that's the thing is make sure you're looking at whatever your territory, whatever yours is, proactively, and make sure that you have a plan and that you're working that.
love it. And then
There's too many things that we just react to, right?
right,
Because and a lot of it is necessary stuff, right?
right.
But if you continue to allow that shiny object to take you away from where what's urgent and important, you're never going to get where you want to get.
You'll never hit the goal. No, I mean you nailed it. You have to have that plan because what is that saying? Now I'm gonna try and be like Rob. That saying you have it all. You have a plan until you get punched in the mouth, something like that. I think
Yeah,
Tyson said it.
yeah.
And
Tyson said that. Yeah,
it goes back to what you're saying. It's one thing to get in the field with no plan and just trying to react to customers, but if you have a plan, and even if your plan can't be executed the way you thought, you're going to be able to move a lot farther and a lot faster because you had that original plan. You had something to kind of bring baseline back to and operate from there, even though the environment did not support that original plan. So I completely agree with that.
but if I might, when I say the phrase self-aware, what does that mean to you?
Self aware is the awareness of how you are perceived by the people around you.
And I think that is a fundamental characteristic of most successful people. And it is something a lot of people are missing. And if you don't have that, it is a big detriment in self,
Mhm,
in my experience.
mhm.
And so if you're not conscious of the room, if you're not conscious of how people are reacting to what you're saying, but in order to be able to do that, you have had to have practiced.
Mhm.
You have to know your stuff cold so that you can be aware of the environment and you can be self-aware.
Right.
And I think your definition was great. I think that's where the people that I see, even on my team today, that are really good versus those that are struggling, there's a big difference in their self-awareness.
Absolutely. All right, Rob. This has been fantastic spending time with you today. We have one more thing to do, and that's called the lightning round. Are you ready?
I as ready as I'll ever be.
As ready as I'll ever be. Okay. And you have 4 questions, less than 10 seconds to answer each one. First
Okay.
question: what is the best book you've read in the last 6 months?
I went back and reread Wooden on Leadership and the Wooden's Pyramid of Success. And those two are certainly classics, but they are great reminders of what it takes to be an elite performer and an elite leader, and how striving for those things and working towards them is an ongoing project for life.
Love it. I love it. I read both of those books and I couldn't agree more. Okay. Best movie or TV show you've seen in the last 6 months?
I don't watch a lot of TV or movies, but I guess the best one, tied back to reading, would be Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks, based on the book a man called Ove by Frederick Bachman, and I
Really? I've
watched that
seen that.
on a
I've seen
plane.
the advertising, but I've never actually bothered to watch or read the book or movie. So it's good
Yeah,
stuff.
it's good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How about food? The best meal you've had in the last 6 months?
Well, being in Chicago, if I don't say pizza, I'm probably going to get hit. So we kind of have a tradition with as much as I travel that usually, like on a Thursday or a Friday when I come home, we've got a good Chicago deep dish pizza that's sitting here. But other than that, I would say, I'm a big fan of Eddie V's, and I'm a big fan of their filet. And we just were at one last weekend, so I would probably say that
Okay, that's going in the show notes, everyone. And then
one.
last question. What is the best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I would go back to Iceland, and my wife and I celebrating. We had an anniversary and my birthday all 2 days apart, and we got the pleasure of being in Iceland for that. And it was everything that we thought it would be.
Yeah, Iceland was never on my radar, but I've met a few people that have come from Iceland, and they all say the same thing, that it's something else. So it's making its way on my list as well, Iceland. That's awesome. Rob, again, it was wonderful hearing from you, learning from you, and being on the show today. I know the audience is grateful. Thank you for being on the show today, and we look forward to seeing all the wonderful things you continue to do out there in medical sales.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and my pleasure. And again, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I think you're helping out an awful lot of people, and that's something to be really proud of. So, thanks.
Thank you. And that was Rob Bhana. What is really cool about medical sales is it doesn't matter where you start, whether you started off as a orthopedics rep or trauma or ENT or endoscopy or OBGYN, pharmaceutical, diagnostic testing. Once you're in this space, you have the opportunity to move into other spaces. And the number of people I've spoken to with careers as short as 5 years that are doing amazing, really cool things now, it's a beautiful thing to see. This is the industry where you can start off as a sales rep in any of these fields I mentioned earlier, perform for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then join a startup and have the opportunity to do something like what Rob Bana is doing, or have the opportunity to be on the cutting edge of a supply that's going to change how hospitals operate, or a device that's going to change how the entire procedure is done, or a drug that literally revolutionizes the condition or disease state. It's in this industry that you can have those types of experiences. It's in this industry that you can spend a number of years in one space and literally move all of that experience and value to another space within medical sales. So, for those of you listening right now that listen to Rob Bana's episode, and you're thinking to yourself, give me the chance. I loved what I was listening to. Give me the chance to sell what he's talking about. I would love the opportunity to sell something like that. Or I'd love the opportunity to be connected to something like that. That's why we have the Medical Sales Career Builder program. That's what, Evolve Your Success is all about, helping you evolve your success, right? There's levels of success. And once you hit one, it's time to step it up to the next one. And you continue to evolve. And that can look like many different things. But when it comes to your career trajectory, if you're not in this industry and you know you want to be, why not take advantage of what can help you get there? One of the biggest things the Medical Sales Career Builder offers, our program, is that no one really takes into account the level of support you really need to get into one of these positions. In addition to having somebody work with you that understands the field you want to be in addition to finding out where you want to be, that's first and foremost, then having someone work with you that's in that field, that has years, 10, 15 plus years of experience, giving you all the ins and outs. Then somebody working with you to teach you all that you need to know about interviewing, the process, how many you might have, what you say to each type of individual. And then work with somebody to develop a personal story that actually communicates your value. When you have that kind of support, You're going to show up differently. When you have that kind of support, you're going to do things that you've never done before. And that's what we're all about. You're literally evolving to the person you need to be to get this job. And then when you get the job, that's what the journey's just started. You then have to continue to evolve to be a performer and continue to evolve to maintain that success. And then, of course, evolve to whatever level you want to take it to after that, including joining a startup and doing something like what Rob Bhana is doing. This is the opportunity you have, and this is what I believe in. And it's created such a life for me that I've made it my mission to invite as many people as possible, and not just invite them to this space, but show them how to actually get in and succeed. So again, if this is you, if you're someone out there that's listening to this episode right now and you're thinking to yourself, yes, Samuel, you're speaking my language. I still and absolutely want to be in a medical sales position. Help me. Then go to evolveyoursuccess.com, fill out the application, schedule some time with one of our account executives, and let's have a conversation and get you to where you need to be. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that are doing things differently in the medical sales space. So I really do hope you come back next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.